So we're really just on the tip of the iceberg here. And, so we just want to make that clear. We're happy we love your questions. I mean, more than anything else, we want this to be a dialogue between you all and us. So feel free to chat with us and chat your questions. If you want to come on live, that's fine too. We're happy to have a connection with you if you don't mind being on the camera and having everybody see you.
Yeah, so if you do have a question and you want to come on the camera, just let Sarah know that I'd like to get on the camera and talk about this one. So we can do that. And we also had quite a few people write in with questions.
That's right.
Some of them wanted to keep it private, and we gave them answers, and we're more than happy to do that for you as well. And then some said, raise it and answer it on Mindful Mondays if you have time. So we've got a whole list of those as well.
And we did this last week. I just want to give one qualifier. We are not sex therapists. We are
sex experts.
We're not sex experts. We're a couple who practice relationship therapy together and apart. And we try to use our skills as much as possible, and we use our own relationship as a laboratory or a vehicle to practice what we preach. So when it comes to sexual intimacy, again, we try to practice our skills. So anything we talk to you about today is based on some research and some personal experience that we have in our relationship. So it's not right or wrong, it's just our approach or our feelings, our thoughts. So because this topic is so nuanced, there's no one right answer to any of these questions, really. There's multiple answers.
And sometimes, we disagree in it, and our opinion is based on just our experience and our own opinion, but also based on the work that we're doing with our private clients. We come to different conclusions. Sometimes, I would say most of the time we agree, but sometimes there's nuances that we disagree on.
Definitely. So unless we have a question from you all, we'll read one of the questions that came in this week. Sarah's going to read the question. Make sure you all hear it. We'll try to repeat it if you didn't hear it.
I'm a mother, and we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. We are both exhausted, and the last thing I can think about is sex. Not having sex is taking a toll on our relationship, and I'm just exhausted. Any suggestions?
A lot.
Yeah.
First of all, it's so interesting with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old because, you're not that far away from meeting and getting married, I'm assuming. I could be wrong. But what I see a lot in the office are couples that come in and they went from, having this wonderful romantic relationship, getting married, the marriage, the honeymoon, and then being this newlywed couple, and all of a sudden they're pregnant. And life just changes on a dime. And we're just not really prepared for it. And one of the things that I notice that changes a lot for these couples is that they are such enthusiastic beginners. So they've got this baby. I only had one child, so I can totally relate to this. And you have this long awaited for baby, and you're so excited, you don't want to screw it up, right? So all of your energy and effort goes into this baby.
100%.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't leave a lot left for the couple. And that's kind of a surprise because it's new. Prior to that, all the energy went into the couple.
Right.
So I think that's one of the reasons why you're experiencing a problem.
And can I just throw something in there?
Sure.
It's a known researched fact that relationship satisfaction goes down after children are born. So it's common knowledge. I mean, it takes a lot of effort and energy to push against that and find a way to find the couple once the kids are born. Yeah,
I remember. So I don't know if you remember, but I adopted my daughter from China. So I got her when she was 1. And I remember going to a playground and all the moms were there. And I was new to being a mom, but they had been at it for a long time. And I brought my nephew Ryan with me. And after the meeting, I said, so what did you think? And he said, that was a really interesting meeting. I said, what was so interesting about it? And he said, you were one of the older moms, no offense, but you were one of the older moms and you looked the best. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, none of them were wearing any makeup. They all looked exhausted. You just seemed more refreshed and more enthusiastic and you looked normal. But these moms looked worn down. And 6 months later, I became one of them. But I think if I look at the dynamic of what happens there, is that we put so much into our children. We give them the best clothes, we dress them up, we cuddle them, we kiss them. All of our energy and resources goes to this baby.
Right.
And then at
There's
the end of the
nothing
day,
left
there's
for
nothing
me,
left for us.
for
Yeah.
us.
So if you're feeling that way out there, what I would say is, what are some ways that you can rejuvenate yourself and take back some of that energy? Because the reality is, this baby comes into an existing system, and the system is myself and my husband, or my husband, my wife.
Mhm.
And they shouldn't really dominate the system. They should enter the system gracefully. And how they enter the system is really up to us, and how we manage that. And at all costs, we really want to preserve the unit.
Right.
Because
Right.
at the end of the day and throughout the day, it's going to make for a better relationship. So I would say, what are some ways that you can restore and take back some of your energy?
Right. And I would add to that just one small addition, which is what we talked about it a lot last week. And I just want to remind you that one way to maintain sexual intimacy when you're swamped with little ones running around and even older children is schedule sex. I mean, I beat it to a drum last time, and I just want to say it again. We schedule everything. We schedule doctor's appointments. We schedule going out to dinner. We schedule time with friends. There's a myth out there about sex has to be spontaneous. It doesn't have to be spontaneous. It's just a myth. Scheduling sex will support and help you endure your sexual intimacy with each other. So it's highly recommended. Okay, so make that time. You have to create that time,
and we just don't have to give all of our energy to them. I think that's like a cultural myth.
Yeah.
Everything goes to the kids.
Right.
We have to do that. So I would rethink that.
I agree.
Next question. Do men and women experience physical intimacy differently?
Do men and women experience sexual intimacy differently? Well, ask any man, they'll tell you for sure. Absolutely. Or ask any woman. Absolutely. So we know that men and women experience sexual intimacy differently. Men will experience sex as a way to stay connected, that is their love language. For a man, feelings of sexual intimacy is going to create a sense of security, feeling okay in the relationship, feeling happy. So they just can go right for it. The emotional connection comes after the physical connection. For most men, this is a generality. For women, on the other hand, they often need to feel more emotionally connected before they can feel physically connected. Again, in general, so for men, it's critical that they help their girlfriend, their significant other, to feel like you are present emotionally, that you are there for them, that you're hearing them, that you're listening to them, that they're able to feel like you have their back before they're going to jump into bed with you. For men, a lot of men will just jump into bed with you. They don't care if they feel emotionally connected or not. That comes later. So that's a significant difference. And that's going to create an enormous amount of conflict and confusion, oftentimes, if you're not kind of in sync with that and understanding that. So it's one of the differences that creates some havoc in relationships. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's good. I think, women just fall in love when they're receiving, and that is not just the physical sense of receiving, but it's the emotional sense, as you refer to.
Yeah.
And men fall in love when they're able to give.
Right.
So it's just, yeah.
Right.
Next question. It seems like we are always in conflict with each other, which makes it very difficult to have a physically intimate relationship. It's almost starting to feel like we are roommates.
Take it.
Well, yeah, you're right. If you're always in conflict, it's really hard to get to the physical component. And that's why emotional intimacy paves the way for good physical intimacy. And if you're emotionally not connected, makes it we're saying, women need and want that emotional connection to hop into bed.
Right.
So what was the question again, Sarah? It's like,
we are always in conflict with each other, which
Right.
makes it very difficult to have a physically intimate relationship, and it feels like we're roommates.
yeah, and it does feel like you're roommates if you're not having sex. So if you just look at it from you want and need some emotional connection to have sex, it behooves you to really pay attention to that. And I think what happens is that we start saying we can't connect, we're always in conflict. And then we focus on the problem rather than focusing on the solution. So what are some of the things that we need to do to reconnect rather than dwelling on the fact that we're disconnected?
Right, right. And I think anger and conflict just destroys sexual intimacy. And
Well, unless you want to have angry sex.
unless you want angry sex. There is such a thing as angry sex, I guess, or make-up sex. But yeah, in general, what I like to say is what goes on in the living room tends to go on in the bedroom. So, you know, if you're having arguments and you're in conflict, it's going to find its way into the bedroom, and sex is not going to be great. So what do? And I think Debbie has a lot of strategies around this. And I think that the idea of feeling cared for and feeling loved is extremely important. So we want to be making sure that we're attending to the feelings of our partner and caring about our partner in ways that make them feel loved and cared about. And that is going to translate into good sex in the bedroom as well.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, again, I think if you're always in conflict, you have an assessment in your head that we're always in conflict.
Right.
And so I would venture to say that if I say we're always in conflict, in my mind, I'm blaming you and you're blaming me. And so much the problem with conflict is not taking the responsibility for it. So I would sit down with my partner and just say, okay, listen, we're in conflict a lot, seems to be affecting our bedroom,
right,
you know, life. And what can we do? What's one thing I can do for you
right,
that would help us in those situations? And what's one thing you can do for me?
Right, right. I mean, I think we've gone back and forth in talking about conflict management. You know, conflict management was a whole topic unto itself that we discussed. And really what we're talking about is, okay, get your conflict management skills together and start to deal with conflict outside of the bedroom so that you can have a great sex life in the bedroom. But deal with it. Pony up. Figure out some conflict management skills. And get on with it, you know.
All right. Pony up. Speaking of, I am thinking about bringing some sex toys into our sex life, specifically a vibrator. I'm afraid to broach the subject with my husband. What's the best way to talk about it?
Interesting. Sex toys. Yay! Should we go get ours? Did you know that, this is a statistic I learned recently, 30% of women do not orgasm during sexual intercourse. So they need outside stimulation to help if you want to orgasm. That's an interesting phenomenon. Sex toys are a fantastic way to help with sexual stimulation and orgasm. So, you know, we're firm believers in toys. Of course, you got to be very sensitive how you talk about toys to your husband in particular or your boyfriend. Men can be quite sensitive in general, women too. But of course, as a male, I recognize that it can feel like it's replacing you somehow.
I think that may be with this question, the concern.
Yeah, the concern about how to talk to your boyfriend about it.
It's a vibrator in particular, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where that would be threatening. You want the vibrator instead of me, but she hasn't asked him yet. It sounds to me like she hasn't asked him.
She hasn't had the conversation.
Right. And a lot of times we kind of assume that he's going to have a hard time, and so we'll delay the conversation, or we just won't have it. So I think just having it in a way that, what suggestions would you have? Like, what could she say to him that would ease the feeling of him not being good enough, if that's the concern?
Yeah, I mean, the most straightforward question would be, how do you feel about bringing a vibrator into our bedroom?
I feel lousy.
You feel lousy?
What, I'm not good enough?
No, it's not that you're not good enough. Well, yeah, you're not good
Not
enough.
big enough?
No.
I don't stay hard enough? I mean, really, I'm not good enough for you?
No,
I mean, how does she address that question?
I think that is the core of the problem, why she doesn't want to address it. She's worried that is going to be the reaction.
Right.
So, you know, again, I would say, you know, let's explore what is it that you're worried about if we were to bring the sex toy into the bedroom.
I think I would probably start maybe with like, what's her concern? Like, I'm having a hard time climaxing.
Yeah.
And that's just me. It's not you.
Right.
It's me. It's not you.
Yeah.
And I think that if I had a little bit of extra stimulation and you, that would help me, you know, achieve that. And I get anxious when I think I'm not going to, and then it just all falls apart for me. So maybe just like own the situation. So it's away from him, and it's really just about her.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. You could also ask, I mean, don't assume that he's never considered using one before.
Right.
Maybe
right.
he has. So ask, have you ever considered using one before?
Right.
And, you know, what kinds of sex toys would you be interested in?
And again, maybe just start with her issue. Like, I'm having a hard time climaxing.
Yeah.
I've given it some thought, and I have a couple of ideas.
Right.
So it's just, again, it's on her.
Yeah. You don't want to replace him, and I think, well, you don't want him to feel like
You don't replace him.
Well, that could happen.
You go watch that.
I think a lot
show.
of guys are like, you know, here's the vibrator, I'll see you in a few minutes. But there's a way to participate in the process, and this is nuances with how to be with a, you know, with a sex toy. So I'm part of it. I'm an extension of it. So I don't feel like it's just that and then me. Hope that helps.
Great.
Any questions from out there? Or we just
Don't be shy. Jump in.
Next question. Since my wife started gaining weight, I've noticed that I'm losing my interest in being sexual with her and not feeling as attracted to her.
That's a tough one. I think men are so visually oriented, right? And so we see this a lot, and you know, we see it a lot. I've had my own experience with it, and I can tell you from a woman's perspective, I totally get the problem. I mean, you take it personally. It's like everybody wants to feel loved unconditionally, and when somebody's saying that you're who you are, your physical appearance doesn't attract me, then, you know, where I went to when that happened to me was like, do you not love me for who I am inside? It's just all physical. And it became a very personal situation. Since I've seen this a lot in the office, I have a different perspective on it now. And the perspective is, I get it. I mean, I get that men are visual. And I also get that men are sometimes part of the problem. So, you know, like in my situation, we were going out to eat a lot. We weren't eating the right things. I mean, there were a lot of things that we were doing as a couple that was contributing to me not being as thin as I would like. And there were probably a lot of things that he could have done to help and support me. But, you know, that wasn't an interest level. So I would say if you're not attracted to your wife, or is it the woman that's asking? It's the woman that's saying she's not. First of all, I think what I would say is, what do you want for yourself? Do you want to be thinner? And if you want to be thinner, then focus on, you know, your health and your vitality and your own personal body outside of him. And I got so wrapped up in the personal assault that I didn't even see that as an opportunity. I didn't see that as an option because I was so much taking it personally. So what do you think from a man's perspective?
It's a good point. I mean, I think that, you know, anybody who's concerned about their weight, it seems like the worst thing you can do is point it out to them.
Yes.
It's like they know they're overweight. And for you to like say it is like sticking it in their face. And you don't need to do that. I mean, it's just mean, basically. I mean, you don't have to be so honest. So basically, what you need to do is, if you're the one who's concerned about your partner's weight, is come up with some ideas for each other on how to reduce the weight situation. For example, you know, Debbie and I had membership to a club, and we don't go there anymore. But, you know, renew the membership and start going to the gym together. Like, take the lead on that. You know, regarding cooking, I mean, start preparing healthy meals. Maybe take a cooking class. You know, that would be a nice thing to do together, but for healthy meals. Or another thing you could do is, like, instead of going out with friends to eat on Friday night, go take a yoga class, or go take a salsa dance class, or go ride a bike. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities for, you know, helping your partner.
So this is kind of interesting. When we were putting the book together, Craig had already written his tip.
Yeah.
And so we were going through a lot of tips that he had written, ones that I've written. We were trying to compile them all. And so I was reading this tip, and of course, I have my own personal experience with this. So I'm like, oh, this is a good one. Let's see what he says. And then I thought, oh my God, he's done all of those things with me.
Practice what you preach.
Exactly. So I'm like, oh, do you think that I'm overweight? And so, we had that conversation. He's like, no, I don't think you're overweight. I just, those are things that, so he never really went there, right? Which for me was a beautiful and healing thing. That here I have a guy that, may think that, if I weighed fewer pounds, that would be great. But he was really being proactive and doing the things that he could, but was in his control.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's important. But if it's your guy that's doing it, then, and he's stuck there, I would say focus on you. What do you want? You want to be thinner? Be thinner. And not allow his comments to affect you. Own your own space.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
Next question. My partner and I are at odds with our current level of sexual intimacy. More often than not, he wants to have sex and I do not.
Well, can I jump in and say one thing?
Yeah.
What I noticed is if you were to wait for each partner to be equally sexually desirous of each other, sex would go down by half. Okay, sexual inequality and desire is the norm. That's always the case. One wants it more than the other. So the question is, just understanding that and accepting that. And then what do you do about it when there's a sexual discrepancy in terms of who wants
the
what
question
when?
is such a good one. We hear it a lot, and the question that comes up for me is what's going on behind that, right? So why, it could be sometimes men, you could generalize, just have a higher sex drive, but what's going on with the women that hers isn't as high? Is it stress at work? Is it stress with him? Is it a physical problem? I mean, there's just so many reasons that get in the way.
Right.
But I would say too that, again, it comes to the issue of not taking responsibility. So the question that I always ask couples is who are discrepant or just both low, right? Is what are you doing that that makes you less sexually desirous? What are you doing to turn yourself off? And the answers that I get are we're watching too much TV, I'm checking my phone, I work overtime, I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm not getting enough exercise, I'm not eating right. There's so many things that we do, all of us do. And what are the things that you're doing to turn yourself off? And then the other question is, what are you doing that turns yourself on? Or what can you do that can turn yourself on? And these two questions are super important and revealing. And they're questions that we often don't ask ourselves. It just goes under the radar. We don't even think about it. But we live with the result, which is a lowered sex drive.
That's true. What about we listen to a lady by the name of Esther Perel a lot, and she talks a lot about cultivating the desire by cultivating the wanting. What is she? Maybe you could share what she's referring to.
I think what Esther Perel talks about is desire is owning the wanting.
Owning the wanting.
And I love that because a lot of times we suppress the wanting for whatever reason. I shouldn't want, I've got these kids, I shouldn't want, I'm too old, I shouldn't want, I'm too busy, whatever it is. And we don't take a moment to really own the wanting that we have in our own bodies and our own minds. And we put the focus and the emphasis on another area.
And when I think about owning the wanting and fanning the desire, I think about, what fans desire? And a lot of the reading that we've been doing really talks a lot about creating obstacles between you and your partner. Think about the beginning of your relationship. One of the things that fanned your desire was the pursuit, the idea that maybe you won't be able to have your partner in the way that you want to have her, intimately, sexually, sensually, going after that, because there's obstacles, there's things in the way that kind of make you have to court her, make you have to win her over. And I think there's a lot to that. I think that if it's too easy and we become too comfortable, we talked about this last time, with each other, and it's just like rote, it's like it's white bread again, you know, it's the same old story, then, you know, there's not going to be that desire. But if you create some mystique, you create some mystery, you create some obstacles to having your desire met, that is going to even fan your desire more.
So what would be an example of an obstacle?
Well, an obstacle could be you saying no.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. I know we're talking about when she says no, but not just no, but no, I don't want intercourse. I want something else. I want you to stimulate me today with your hand or your tongue. I want to take a bath together tonight. I don't want to have intercourse. I want to do something else. Just pushing the envelope, trying something new that maybe doesn't include intercourse. You know, intercourse isn't the end game all the time. It doesn't have to be the power play that we go for. There's lots of other things to do. And I think part of the problem in fanning sexual desire is we always think that's the end goal. So that would be one thing. I think we can just expand our repertoire of what we do in the bedroom, how we play with each other, how we touch each other, you know, all of that. And the other thing I just want to say just real briefly about fanning desire is that desire should never be coerced. There should never be pressure. You pressuring your partner or coercing your partner to have intercourse or sex with you will kill the desire immediately. So don't even go there. That's one thing I want to say to especially the guys who are feeling frustrated by this. So, you know, and again, I'll just reiterate what Debbie said. You know, if you're having conflict in the living room, you're going to have conflict in the bedroom, and the desire is going to be less. So you've got to deal with the conflict. It's a big one.
We have been married for 8 years, and it feels like the romance has dwindled. I get that we have busy lives, but I really miss the romance.
Yeah, so the romance, everybody misses the romance. Like we think of romance, we think when we first met. And that's such a magical time, because think about when you first met. It's like everything about this person is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they glance at you, what
Hormones.
they wear. And your hormones are just going crazy, but you're noticing all these beautiful, wonderful little things about the person. It took me to
You're so excited when you see them. You know, it's
anything
like,
they do.
There's nothing you can do wrong. The romantic stage.
Yeah, and the problem is that, you know, once we get into the power struggle phase, which is the next phase, we lose the romance. And what happens, we start focusing on what we don't like. Right. So it's like all of a sudden the way he moves his head is like so annoying to me.
Yeah, what turned you on before is now an annoyance. It's often sort of a transition from that incredible romantic stage. The romantic stage can last a while. I've seen the romantic stage last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it is a stage. And if you think for a moment that you're going to be able to maintain that romantic stage for the length of a long-term relationship, you have another thing coming, because it doesn't. Romantic stage is supposed to end. As a matter of fact, that romantic stage is the glue, is the bond that allows you to continue long-term in a relationship. So we need that romantic stage. Now, how do you keep it? It's a big question. It's like the $1 million question.
How do you get it? It sounds like this question was more how to get it back.
How do you get it back?
She misses it, yeah.
So again, just normalizing the fact that, you know, over time, you're going to start taking each other for granted, and you're going to stop doing the things you did in the beginning of the relationship as you move into the middle stages. So how do you get it back? Awareness, intention, deciding, I want romance in this relationship. It's going to be useful. It's going to be helpful. It's going to make my relationship 10 times better. So think about date nights. Think about when you went on a date. Did you remember when was the last time you put aftershave on? When was the last time you cleaned your house because your partner was coming over and really tidied it up? You know? So the things we take for granted later on, we would never take for granted. Like I never burped in front of Debbie for the first couple of years.
Oh,
I
that's
never
so not true.
farted in front of Debbie in the first couple. It would have been the grossest thing ever. So now, no big deal. But you know, this is what I'm talking about. You know, you have to kind of bring the romance back, and you do that by so many different ways.
Yeah,
right?
I think you mentioned intention. I think, you know, both partners, what I do with my couples is say, okay, you want to bring romance back? Let's talk about where it is now. So have both of them rate it. So our romance is at a 5 and a 10 scale. Where do you want to get it? We want to get it to like an 8 would be great. Okay. So let's talk about one thing you guys can do to increase romance. And that conversation is what's really important. But it starts with intention. It starts with two people saying, we want back what we once had. And I think you're making some really good points. Like in NLP, we always talk about like modeling people who are doing what you want to do well. So if I want to build a romantic relationship, I'm going to look at people who do that naturally. You know who those are? People who just met.
Right.
You know, all I'm thinking about. So what do people do when they first meet? It's what we're talking about. It's noticing everything wonderful about you. And we do just the opposite after the power struggle. I notice everything that drives me nuts about you.
Right. So what are some things that I do that are romantic for you? Still, do I do
There
anything?
he goes with your, give me an appreciation.
I bought her this just this week.
He did for Mother's Day. No, I
Oh,
mean,
that is a big issue. Can I just jump in?
yeah.
Holidays. I'm serious. You know, Mother's Day, okay? Oh, no, here's a romantic thing I did, which I have to pat myself on the back. Debbie and I were in Costco, okay? And she's in the jewelry.
Oh my God.
I shouldn't have said that. Okay. Never mind. The point is, damn, I'm screwed. The
He's
point
bragging
is,
that he got this at Costco.
all right, the
Okay, it's not really romantic, honey.
all right, but
He
the
just
point
went
is,
down to it.
but the point is, she saw it. We were walking past the case. She pointed to it. She said, "I love that." When she walked by, I got a pen and I wrote down the name and of
It's
the
at
item,
Costco.
and I put it in my pocket. A year later, I bought it for her.
I don't
Because
wait a year to get that
because
thing.
I saw it and I remembered. That's romantic, okay? Romantic is
It was at Costco.
doing what you would have done. Okay, it's still beautiful. But holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, all of those things, you know. I mean, I make fun of guys on Valentine's Day. It was so funny because you can walk into Rite Aid or CVS Valentine's Day morning and see all the guys grabbing that last minute card and then going over to Ralph's and picking up a couple of flowers. It's like there's no thought in that. There's no
But you know,
intentionality.
I have to say, you know, since we're talking about Mother's Day, because when we first met, you know, he didn't do anything for me for Mother's Day. And I couldn't believe it. And his argument was, I'm not your mother. You're not my mother. So why would I celebrate you on Mother's Day? And so we had to have this whole educational period where I said that Mother's Day is a time to celebrate all the moms in your life. And who else would you want to celebrate but your wife? You know, the woman that you love, and celebrate her. And even though, you know, it's a stepdaughter, she's still a mother, and she's a mother to your stepchildren. And like, how beautiful is that to celebrate? But it took some education, you know, so.
I came around.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem. And a lot of times women come in, it's like, I'm not going to tell him if he doesn't know. You know,
yeah.
he should just get it.
I've heard that.
It's like, no, they don't just get it. You gotta go after what you want. You gotta express your needs and your desires, and you know what? You're gonna get it.
Yeah, very true.
What does it look like the other way around? So Craig, you talked about buying Debbie a gift and being thoughtful. And that way, Debbie, how do you cultivate romance for Craig or show him romance?
Well, it's all individual. I mean, I could tell you how I do it with him, but it's all
How
individual.
do you do? I'd like to know.
I think we're out of time now. It's been really wonderful. No, okay. How
Thanks
do I
for
do
the
it?
question.
Answer the question. So, you know, I'm not a big cook at all, right? I mean, I never learned. My mom was too like concerned with keeping the kitchen clean. So I was like an unwanted entity. And so, I kind of don't want to cook meal. So what's really, really romantic for him I think, is when I do take the initiative and I get the cookbook out and I get a recipe and I go to the store and I get all the ingredients and I set the table, I light some candles, I get a nice bottle of wine, and I put some effort into it. I think that's romantic for you.
It is. It's very romantic. And, you know, I mean, every guy I know will tell you that one of the ways to a man's heart is through his stomach. It's an old cliche, and there's a lot of truth to that. So it feels very, very romantic and very attentive.
I think the other thing that I do, I mean, it would be more interesting to ask him, but from my perspective, is I try and keep the house really organized and clean so that it feels like there's not all these energetic obstacles. It's not a mess. And so I'll go out of my way to it just looks good. And I'll bring in flowers and just make it look really nice and clean and welcoming. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's romantic, though.
Really?
No.
Oh, I was trying to get romantic points.
No.
What is it?
It's caring.
Caring,
For
but
sure,
not romantic.
caring, but not romantic.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else do I do?
I think one of the things you do is we do schedule sex. I'll be honest with you. And we're not that very busy that we could have more spontaneous sex, but we do schedule it. And one of the things is she really looks forward to it. And that's very exciting for me, that she actually is, thinking about it.
Right.
And we both have little jokes that we do Friday morning.
See, that's so funny. I wouldn't think of that as romantic.
To me, it's romantic.
I thought the cleaning the house was romantic.
Question.
Okay.
So 7:41, we've got time for one more question that came in. You said that women feel turned on when they're receiving and men feel turned on when they're giving. I'm a woman and I like to give. How do I learn to receive or ask for what I want or cultivate sexual intimacy when I feel like the roles are reversed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I would say to that woman that it's so important to cultivate giving and receiving. But as a woman, if receiving is something that you're not comfortable with, I mean, that I would definitely start working on, because a man wants to feel that he's giving and that it's being received. And so I would start with little things, like I would just practice it, because by practicing receiving, it's not only with him, it's with your friends. Like, how well do you receive a compliment? How well do you receive a gift? How well do you receive help? These are all things that people are giving you as a gift. And if we're not very good at receiving it, we're just like, oh, it's okay, don't do that for me, then we deny the person the opportunity to give, which is what they want to do. So it's foundational, I think, to cultivating an intimate relationship. And I don't mean physically, just physically, but it could be any relationship.
I think that's true. I think identifying your needs is very important. And then, being clear about what it is you do want. And then even if you can come up with one thing that would please you, that would make you feel loved, that would make you feel cared about, one thing, and make a request, not a demand, a request. I would love it if you would massage my shoulders. I would love it if you brought me a cup of tea. I would love it if you would massage my feet. Just pick one thing to break the ice for yourself so that you can start to feel what it's like to receive. I would like you to hold my hand when we're walking down the street.
A lot of women fall into this, I think, because it's just a kind of a socially entrained thing that we're supposed to give.
Right.
And what happens, because we do that so naturally, many women, is that we become exhausted.
Yeah.
And we deny ourselves the full pleasure of an intimate connection.
Right. And I think what you said is critical about guys not wanting to give.
Right.
And not having that opportunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
So it's 7:44, and you did mention your book. Maybe everyone on the call isn't even aware that you wrote a book. Could you just talk briefly about your book and where they can find it?
Oh, we love that question.
I didn't know if you noticed it. It's been in the background this whole time. So The Mindful Couple, 52 weekly strategies for real love and connection. And a lot of what we've been talking about the last few weeks, and a lot of what we've been talking about the last 6 weeks actually, are in this book. These are really practical, down-to-earth tips, strategies on almost every kind of scenario that can come up in a relationship. Just to read you a few. How do I empathize? How how do I create a vision? How do we build trust? How do I learn a love language, my partner's love language? How do I ritualize appreciation, balancing us time and me time, compromising, and it goes on and on. There's 3 parts to it. There's mastering communication, managing conflict, and kindling intimacy, sex, and romance.
And each tip comes with a practice, which we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on that. They're just kind of quick, fun things to do. And, we did it because it's quick and easy and just really easy things to make a difference in your relationship in those areas.
Last but not least,
yes.
What are you talking about next week on Mindful Monday?
What are we talking about? I think pet peeves.
Pet peeves. It's the little things that break down
Make
a
the big
relationship,
difference.
right?
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about those little things, and we call them pet peeves, the things that really bother you about each other. And we're going to focus on that. We hope we'll get lots of feedback from you about what are some things that are your little pet peeves in your relationship. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. And then the week after that, we're going to be focusing on in-laws and dealing with in-laws. 80% of couples have problems with in-laws. So we really want to focus on that and talk a little bit more about that as well.